I'm really, really delighted to be here, and I'd like to thank especially BAPPENAS and the Indonesia Institute, which I learned about today for the first time, because the last time I was in the bank, it had not been before that time. And I think the last time I was giving a workshop. I think that's at least 10 or maybe 15 years ago. So it's been quite some time. What I'd like to do today is to give you a sample of some of the work that we have done that will hopefully address some of the issues under the umbrella of the title of my talk, which is basically how we use economic impact analysis to help us frame policy, to help us evaluate policy, and in particular, to try to interpret how our economy is doing. And I think that increasingly, and I hope to make the case to you, that without this, I think we are going to have a very, very difficult time surviving in the very complex world in which we are now. Okay. However, I do want to take a few minutes to do some advertising. We started out this session with advertising of the BI Institute, so I'm going to advertise with my lab because in next month we celebrate our 30th birthday. And this is kind of an interesting event, and the connection with BI is that we started off as a collaborator with the Federal Reserve Bank, which is the central bank of the U.S., with the branch. What we did was to try to really help the local economies face the problems that they had and make much more effective decisions. And we did that by providing analytical capability, and not to tell them what to do, but to at least be able to analyze options that they were considering, to show them what the outcomes might be, not only in the short run, but also in the long run. And I think that this idea of enhancing public policy decision-making has been the main motivator for the regional economics applications lab. And we started out focusing on the Chicago region, we expanded into the Midwest. We have, as you can see, also worked in a number of other countries, most recently in China, but for a long time we worked in this country, in Indonesia, in Japan, Korea, Australia, many countries in Europe, and in several countries, including Brazil, Chile, and Colombia in South America. And basically, I think that the main thing that we do that sort of product differentiates us from other social science organizations is we try to foster the same type of environment that you would have in a science. And I was particularly intrigued when my wife went back to the University of Illinois to do a Ph.D. And in her environment in plant pathology, the professors and the students work together in the lab. They talk to each other. And I like the atmosphere. I like that stuff. So when I created Rio, rather than having everybody in separate offices, we have an open plan. Nobody has a private office, including me. And as a result of that, people sit next to each other, they start talking to each other, and as a result of that, collaborations evolve. And I think that one benefit that people who I meet on a regular basis throughout the world say, it was that ability to be able to talk, to be able to interact, that really was the most attractive part of the whole operation. And we have a weekly seminar that encourages people to make presentations about your progress and so on and so forth, as well as a number of other an American PhDs. And for most of the time, I was the only native English speaker in my lab, but I am really not a native English speaker because I was born in Wales. So we had no native English speakers. We average around 25 to 30 participants. About half of them are doing their PhDs in economics, agricultural economics, urban and regional planning, we have one person from geography. And the other 14 to 15 are visiting scholars. And these are usually people in the middle of PhD programs in other countries that are listed there. They come and spend 1 year with us, and then they go back and finish a degree. And you can see at the bottom, we've had a very long and very effective partnership with Brazil, developing something we call ASYMMETRY, which is the ASYMMETRY program. And after 2 years of this course, they come spend 1 year with us, go back to Brazil, finish their degree. I monitored the first 19 of them are now professors. One returned to the federal government from which he came. So it's been a very, very successful program. And I would love to start something like this with Indonesia. Because I think that the one advantage of the program in Brazil is the students go back. Because that's where they get PhD. And so often we find the students who come to the U.S. Want to stay. And I really cannot complain about that because I was one such person. So that, yes, I'd like to see people return, and I have to be very grateful that I like it. Okay. All right. We've also been very effective in persuading some other people to form labs like us, and here's the current ones, and we've just formed one in Nankai University in Tianjin, in China, and we're in the process of forming one in CDE in West California. So the whole idea is to foster and develop an international network, and yes, if the question of licenses, we'd love to have one in Indonesia. Okay. So what do we do? Well, public policy decision making requires access to a lot of sophisticated tools. And I am told that I must not talk about models in this presentation, but about what we do. But I don't want you to assume that after the event has occurred, what was the impact on the economy? And I think the other two aspects are also very, very critical. A lot of times we have options about how we're going to see the economy evolve. We have a couple of strategies in mind, and sometimes it's very helpful to know what the likely outcome of strategy 1 compared to strategy 2. And one of the things that we do not do is we never tell the policymaker which one to choose. Because I don't think it's good for a university to become what we call partisan. In other words, I don't want to be seen to be the city of Chicago's economic development analysis. I will do analysis for the city of Chicago, but I will not be their official spokesperson. I'm a person who uses the numbers. I interpret the numbers, but I don't say this option is better than this option. And that's very, very difficult to do. But I think it's been a very sound decision, and when we started off as a collaborator with the Federal Reserve Bank, the Federal Reserve Bank tries to be impartial, and so we try to maintain that tradition. And the other final thing we do is a lot of planning analysis, particularly related to infrastructure. What types of infrastructure investment are likely to generate the greatest return on the economy? And that sort of stuff becomes very difficult because our economic models have to be integrated with network-based models, and that is not a simple task. But we have done it, and we've actually done it in Indonesia, and I think we've been successful. So, the only thing about the models I'm going to talk about is this one. Behind all the analysis that comes later are a set of analytical tools. And these are divided into 3 main categories. Something called the econometric-input-output model. This is a model that captures the purchases and sales relationships between sectors in the economy. But it does it also over time. And we make forecasts now through to 2050. And we've done it for a number of different regions that are listed. We also have something called computable general equilibrium model. And this is a little bit more comprehensive, particularly focusing on the supply side of the economy. And we've used this in particular for fiscal impact analysis. The state of Illinois is often referred to as the Greece of the United States, not because of our beautiful scenery, our mountains and coasts, rather because of our fiscal incompetence. We have huge long-term deficits and equally large short-term deficits. And our legislature and a lot of policymakers are trying to come up with options to address this problem. And so our goal has been to build a model that we can test what the outcomes will be, particularly in terms of the impact on the fiscal state of the economy and how that fiscal state will therefore enhance or detract from future economic growth of the economy. And because we are not elected officials, we can be what we can say disinterested. In other words, we're not trying to advance one particular program over another. And the final set of things we do are short-term indices and business cycle analysis. And a lot of times people want to know what's the likely growth pattern over the next 6 months to a year. They don't want to know 40 or 50 years ahead, but they want to know something short-term. And so we've done this comparing Chicago with the other 19 top metropolitan areas of the country, and we try to forecast the probability that the local economy of these other economies will stay in expansion or they move to a recession, and look at the interdependence between them. And within the state, we also have some simple analyses for the other metropolitan areas in the state of Illinois. So, all of that is very nice, but for that set of modeling to be valued, policymakers have got to do some homework. And one of my sources of frustration with our state legislature is that they don't like listening to me, all right? And for good reason, because I tell them things that they don't want to hear. That a lot of their past policies have not been very good. And a lot of decisions they've made in the past are creating the problems that we're facing now. And part of the problem is that many of these folks who become politicians have absolutely no training in economics. But they're arrogant. They're lawyers. Sorry, but a lot of lawyers are arrogant. And they'll say, do you think in 15 minutes I can learn enough economics? No. How long is it going to take? Probably a year. Oh my God. Really? I didn't think economics was that different. Well, I think that we need to make our policymakers understand this. And one of the things that I think is very important, they need to understand how an economy works. And you say, that's simple, everybody knows that. Unfortunately, look at our current president. All right? He doesn't know how economics works. And as a result, making very, very sad decisions that are going to come back to haunt us for a decade or more. So we're really talking about how the economy works. Right? In any economy, we've got a set of activities. How are they linked together? How has this structure changed over time? Has it grown more complicated, or has it become less complicated? What drives the local economy? In other words, what is the source of growth for our region? All right? And particularly, as a lot of our work is at the subnational level, people are not used to thinking about a state in these terms. But who are our major trading partners? Why is this important? Because in Illinois, 85% of our exports are to partners within the United States. Only 15% go international. So with which states are we having large and effective trading relationships? How is that balance of trade, that balance of payments? I think we're some of the first people to try to do this at the regional level, to talk about, do we have a positive trading relationship with state A, state B, and so forth. How diversified is our export portfolio? Are we very heavily concentrated? Think back to Indonesia 20, 30 years ago, when the major export was oil. And how over the last 30 years, That has been incredibly diversified. It's still very important, but it is no longer the only major metric. So when we look at an individual state, what we want to know is, what is this portfolio of metrics? How diversified is it? So if one demand for one of those products goes down, will it have a negative effect on the whole economy, or will we be able to write that out? And so we tried to look at this in some detail. And we tried to look at the structure of the flows. And what this last bullet point is basically saying, where are we in domestic and global value chains? Do we produce intermediate goods, or do we produce final goods? And if it's more the intermediate goods, then we need to find out where those intermediate goods go so we can monitor the sources of demand for those goods. And this is the sort of stuff that I think is very important. And so my fantasy one time would be to have all of the state of Illinois politicians in a room like this. I lock the door, I take away their cell phones, and I tell them they have to pay attention because I'm going to tell them how the state economy works. And then they're going to take a test. And if they fail, they have to come back the next day, listen to me for another 3 hours, and take the test again. And they have to keep doing this until they pass. And of course, they wouldn't do it because it would be too complicated for them to have to sit still for 3 hours. I've talked about understanding the economy, but part of that economy which is totally neglected by a lot of policymakers is what I call the demographic sector. Right? They think the only thing they need to understand is trade relations. And the problem is you can have trade in goods and services, but there's another complementary source of trade in people. And we need to understand the dynamics of how people move and why people move. And this is becoming really critical as the structure of the age profile in economies is changing. I've got a few slides later where I'll talk about it. So for an economy, do we receive more people in than we send out? All right. What about the structure of our economy in demographic terms? What about our age structure? Are we aging more rapidly than the rest of the country? What about the occupational structure? Are our skill levels the setup increasing or decreasing? And so this is very important. You'll see some very significant economic implications from this analysis. And one of the real concerns with an aging population is what's going to happen to the size of our labor force and how we're going to deal with the shrinking labor force. And I just came before coming here from China, where they're having the same discussion. It's hard to imagine a country with 1.3 billion people talking about a shrinking labor force. But by 2040, 360 million people in China will be over 65 years of age. So the aging process is also affecting that country. Okay. So sort of standard impact analysis that we'll do. I'm going to sample without any great detail. So standard impact analysis, and then I'm going to focus a little bit on how we address impacts of events which are not forecastable, unexpected events. And one of the really strong concerns now is looking at the impacts of tourism. And so sort of events that Winnie mentioned about the Asian Games and the World Bank IMF meeting are really just dimensions of this huge, the most fastest, rapidly growing industry in the world, and that is tourism. And so for some countries, tourism income is one of the largest sources of export income. For half the OECD countries, it's between 5 and 10%. And for a few countries I've listed here, Turkey, New Zealand, and Greece, it's over 15%. So these are really very important to understand. Where do the tourists come from? Do they come regularly? What do they do when they are in the country? How can we enhance the economic impact? And so a lot of people say, yeah, but these events are short-lived. That's true, but it's the accumulation of those events over the course of a year that really generates that impact. And what we've begun to see is that some of these events begin to generate a dynamic that has important spillover effects. And I'll talk a little bit about one of them in particular, the Chicago Marathon. This is an event that we have been conducting analysis for 16 years, and you'll see it's now become huge. And so that's the sort of thing we would do in terms of impact analysis. But cultural tourism has become an even more rapidly growing industry in the last decade, as more and more people are looking at urban-based centers as a place to go visit. And do this to go hear music, to go hear a famous performer, to hear a play, or go to a museum, which might be having a very special event. We've also done surprisingly something that people were very surprised about, the findings in particular. That within the center of Chicago, the downtown area is called the Loop. It's circumvented by an elevated transit system. And inside that loop, we found that there were 65,000 students attending higher education. Nobody had any idea of this. And the economic consequence of that was amazing, because having higher education facilities there made it more attractive for the businesses to locate there, because many of their employees could then take classes at night after they went to work. And this generated a synergism that has seen the Loop, the center part of Chicago, grow much more rapidly than other parts of the region. The final thing that we started to do our standard industry analysis, and I'm not going to show you everything you just mentioned, but the Ford Motor Car Company, located in Illinois, were interested to know about the supply chain impact. And it turned out that the supply chain impact in Illinois to their assembly plant in Chicago was much smaller than the supply chain to other Ford assembly plants in other parts of the Midwest. And so what this generated for us is some insights into the structure of that regional trade that I talked about a little earlier. Okay, so this is the sort of thing we would do for impact analysis. And you can see, without looking at the numbers, it's not important, but having a race that lasted 1 morning in Chicago generated $337 million economic impact on the Chicago economy. And over time, you can see that impact has grown rather dramatically. It starts off in 1986 with an economic impact of around 50 million, and has now grown to over 350 million. That's the number of people that are running in this race has grown from 15,000 to over 45,000. How is this happening? Are people coming spending more money? Yes. How are they spending more money? They're spending more time in the system. In 1986, the average person was spending half a day in Chicago, running the race and going home. Now they're spending between 3 and 3.5 days. Okay, they have to spend money on hotels, they have to spend money on restaurants, they buy souvenirs, they go to the local museums and so forth. Most importantly, 95% of these people have a very positive feeling about Chicago, and over 80% of them, this is not the first time they've come. So a lot of times, an event can generate what we call spillover effects over time by creating economic impacts in the future. So a person comes, thinks, oh, this is a beautiful city, maybe I'll bring my family here for a long weekend in the summer. All right? So that's the sort of thing that tourism generates. It's just not the event itself, but it's the spillover effects as we go forward. All right. And I talked about this. Okay. So I mentioned here that urban-centered tourism is becoming very, very attractive. And this is something that Jakarta really might want to think about highlighting and so forth, that there are a lot of people like me. Bali is beautiful, but I'm not a beach person. Okay. Much more interesting to me would be to hear some music or to go to a wonderful exhibition in a museum and enjoy a very nice day. That's the sort of tourism that appeals to me and a lot of people like. It's not just those 18-year-old guys from Australia that you should focus on. There are a lot of people like me because we are becoming a growing segment of many populations. 20% of European populations are going to be my age by 2030. Attracting people. But they're not going to lie on the beach. They want to do something a little bit more refined. So one of the things that came about from our early analysis was just focusing a little bit on demographics. I just want to highlight a few things that are really critical here. Migration has become a really hot issue in the U.S. If you look what's happening in Germany, in France, the whole issue of Brexit, the proposal for the British to leave the European Union, a lot of that was centered on immigration and attitudes towards it. And so what we've been trying to understand is how important is that process of migration. So first thing we looked at was just the macroeconomic impact of in and out migration. And then we wanted to think about immigration in terms of its long-term contribution to our economy. And so one of the factors that often gets overlooked is that people just look at the bottom lines, the interaction between consumption and structural change. What they don't look at is the intersection with demographic change. How is that consumption changing as a result of the fraternity aging in the population, or a different mix of people coming into the region over time? So look at the analysis that we've done for Chicago. What we've seen over time is that our per capita income in both the state of Illinois and Chicago has been declining. We used to be 20% higher than the U.S. average, going back to 1970. In 2012, we are now only somewhere around 12% above, and we are continuing to slip. We were once the fifth most prosperous state, we're now around 12 or 13. How did this come about? Two things we can point to. One is the loss of close to 1 million manufacturing jobs. So our middle class, the earning very good wages and salaries, has shrunk dramatically because job opportunities for them have disappeared. And this is a phenomenon that we've seen throughout the U.S. and in many parts of Europe. The second part is as a result of migration. What we've seen is that it's been relatively stable over time. In the last few years, net migration has increased. In other words, more people are leaving than coming in. So if that is the case, how can it have an economic impact? Well, it turns out that a person leaving is not a perfect substitute for a person coming in. And the sort of stylized fact is that the incoming folks tend to be younger, they tend to earn less income. The people leaving tend to be older, they tend to be higher wages. You say, yeah, but that doesn't have much economic impact. You can see here that over a 16-year period, as a result of net migration, Chicago lost $23 billion of income. Now, $1 billion spent in the region would generate about 20,000 jobs, directly and indirectly. So in the course of a year, we are losing the equivalent of about 50% of our annual natural, you can think of it this way, natural growth rate in employment. So just the transfer of people has a very negative effect on our economy. Now, obviously, there are other economies that are going to benefit because they're getting people who are earning more money to come in, and maybe the people builders are earning less money. So this process was very surprising and something that very few people had looked at, and particularly in terms of trying to estimate its economic impact. Okay. So what we're able to do, we have these very nice maps, and I'm just going to show you examples of them. The red lines indicate net out-migration, so we know where people are going. The blue lines indicate net in-migration. In other words, more people are coming in from these places than are leaving. And basically what we're finding is we've got a very interesting geography. That the net in-migration comes from the West, the net out-migration goes to the East Coast, the South Coast, and the West Coast. But the dynamics of this change very dramatically over time. We can also do it in terms of migration. We can also do it in terms of income. Right? Because associated with those migration patterns are the wage and salaries that people earn. And this is one representative in terms of income. The second part that has been very interesting, the fact that demographic change has created a dynamic that has changed the locational pattern of headquarter activities in the metropolitan area. And in the last decade, one after another, major companies headquartered in the Chicago region have moved their headquarters back to the downtown area. And this is very surprising because most people thought that this was an attraction for employees to be located in the suburbs on a nice campus with a lot of grassy areas, access to the mall and schools and so forth. However, the young people working in many of these companies, particularly in the IT parts, don't care about those things. They want to live downtown. They don't want to buy houses. They don't want to buy bicycles. They don't want to buy cars. They are what I call the renting generation, all right? And they want to have a good time downtown. And as a result of this, a lot of companies have followed them. So now United Airlines, the Boeing company, the telephone company, Google, have all moved their facilities to the downtown area. And then that changes in middle age, and then we get a reversal as people retire. They tend to move to places with warmer climates. And people are always surprised. They say, and you want to live in Chicago? Why? It's cold. Yes. But the one thing that I could not imagine is living in a place like Florida, because as one of my neighbors who recently came back said, it's full of old people. And all they do is sit around talking about who's dead, who's dying, and what medication is really effective to keep you alive and keep you in years. And his wife refers to Florida as a death's waiting room. And I think that what we're discovering is that with some policy intervention, we could make this place, even with this lousy weather in the winter, a very attractive place for people to remain because of the amenities that exist, because of the quality of the culture and environment, the restaurants, etc., etc. This is something that our policymakers have not really focused on because they're too busy looking only at economic impacts, not trying to understand how can we really make it attractive for this segment. The other thing too is these older folks are creating a level right down to 30 meters square. On the other hand, there was very little capacity locations because we have a lot of facilities. But it was much, much more the population stuff that was important. Complementing this, we tried to ask the other question, does it matter where the growth takes place within the city region? And so we traced the flows of goods and services, the flows of wages and salaries paid to people who work in those activities. Then they flow back to their homes, then from there to where they shop. And we put this all together, and what we were able to do for a four-region division of Chicago is look at the degree of spillover or interdependence. Because a lot of people say cities don't need suburbs. All right? They are be independent. And if you look at this graph, looking at the flows of goods and services, you can say, yes, it's very, very self-sufficient. But then, if you include the flows of income and then the expenditures on consumer goods and services, it's incredibly independent. We've got a very, very complex plan. And so the answer to the suburbs who complain that the city is getting all the attention and we don't need the city, a lot of your economic activity is generated by what happens in the city. And just don't assume that you're living in some isolated island that has absolutely no connection with any other part of the world. The second aspect of this was to look at the whole issue of income inequality. And what we were able to do is trace this circular flow of income from consumption to output to further income, and try to understand what the nature of the spillover effects are. And again, for this little region division of Chicago, what we were able to capture is something called an interrelational income multiplier. What does that mean? It says if I earn an additional dollar of income and I spend it, who benefits? And the who in this case are the four regions of Chicago. And what you can see is an amazing degree of asymmetry here. So just to look at it, if you look at the column entitled Region 2, this is the least prosperous part of Chicago. It's dominated by African Americans, and most people sort of write it down. It's not very important. It turns out that a dollar of income to the folks living there generates the highest ripple or multiplier effect on the region. But further, the people who benefit the most are the people in the suburbs. 56 cents, shown in blue in the last but one row there, is how much they get. But what happens if we give a dollar of income to people in the suburbs? How much do the people in Region 2 benefit? 5 cents. All right? And what we're finding is this asymmetry in income inequality over space is not just a Chicago phenomenon. People have found this for many other parts of the world. And it's sort of part of that process where we say to policymakers, be very, very careful when you enact policies that you capture what we call the full system-wide impacts. Because if you just look at where the direct effects, you may be missing a very, very complicated picture, which may turn out to really compromise what you really have in mind. Okay. And part of the reason for that is there are no shops on the suburbs. So the residents there, who earn, by the way, $8.7 million of income, have to go to the inner suburbs. You can see those thick black lines, and some of them venture even to the outer suburbs to buy their goods and services. That's why they generate 56 cents of income to the suburbs, because that's where we spend money. And if you looked at the shopping patterns for the people in the rest of the region, none of them would shop on the suburbs, which is why only 5 cents comes back into the region. But that's a spatial measure of inequality. What about between income groups? And we divided this into 5 quintiles from the lowest to highest, and I'll just illustrate in 2010. So Q1 is the lowest income quintile. Q5 is the highest income quintile. And it's exactly the same as the earlier one. If the lowest income quintile receives $1 of income, what is the impact on the region? And you can see those numbers there. The largest recipient of spillovers is the highest income group. They receive 2.68 additional income. But if the highest income people receive money, how does that spill over? And you can see that the first income quintile, circled in red, receives 3 cents. So it's basically this sort of data challenges trickle-down economics. It doesn't happen. And we've seen in the last 2 years, as a result of the massive tax cut in the US, virtually no trickle-down effect in terms of income. Rich people are earning more and keeping more. Poor people are not receiving very much, and wages and salaries in real terms have been virtually unchanged throughout this period. And part of the reason for this is that on the left side, when poor people earn additional dollar income, they spend, they don't save. So it has a much larger economic impact, where rich people have a much higher propensity to invest in the stock market or to buy firms or to buy some capital assets. And as a result, it has very little spending impact. But when we trace the direct and indirect income impacts, you can see that the lowest income group on the left, this is the right side chart, has very little benefit from increasing income. Almost all of it goes to the higher income groups. Policymakers, this is something you need to understand, because all of your proposals, and I can remember thinking about this 30 years ago when I first came to Indonesia, where people in BAPPENAS were just really having a hard time understanding why, after all the investment that was made in Irian, per capita income between Irian and Sumatra, Java, had in fact almost. And part of the reason is the same sort of process that we see in Chicago. You spend $1 billion rupiah in Irian, 80% of it ended up coming back to Sumatra and Java. Only 20 billion remain within the region. Okay? And so over time, as you pour more money there, the leakage or the spillover back to Java and Sumatra kept growing larger and larger. Those economies grew, but Irian did not change very much. And as a result, income inequality increased. And this is something that we really need to understand very effectively and focus a lot more carefully on the spatial structure of interdependence, and in particular on income inequality of the kind of detailed disaggregation I have. And so one of the things we've done in Chicago is moved away from what we call a representative household, putting all households into one set. We disaggregated by income. It didn't show. Okay. You have to take this as faith-based interpretation because you can't see the data. But what we found is that when we disaggregate by age, we get a huge variation in the growth rates of consumption. And the representative household is really a mean with a huge variance. And that variance is growing all the time. I think in the printout, hopefully, that will show you. The second final thing that I'm going to talk about in terms of demographic is immigration. And here I can tell you how troubling this is. When you get 80% of economists in the U.S. Signing letters to the president challenging the immigration policy, and these are people on the right of the political spectrum and on the left of the political spectrum, you know this as a reasonable interpretation that what's going on is incorrect. And this is certainly true of the UK. Without immigration, the U.S. economy in the next 20 years will start to go down. And the reason is that immigrants are filling jobs that Americans won't fill. They are not competing with Americans. And they are picking out vegetables, they are cleaning our streets, they are collecting our garbage. And without their contributions, our estimate from Chicago is that our gross product would be 9% lower in 2050 because our labor force will shrink. And without that immigration contribution, we would be in really serious trouble. Now, there are a lot of other implications which I don't have time to go into, but let me move on. Please tell me when you want to stop. Because I can go on until 2 hours. So let me just give you a sample. All of the stuff I've done thus far are for events that we can forecast, we haven't had. What happens if we deal with some of these events, like floods, hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions? All right. When we were looking at the stuff of the IMF World Bank, we saw a downturn last year when Mount Abu had erupted, and a lot of tourists were several months after, stayed away. I was captive in London for 1 week when the Icelandic volcano decided to have a one show because no flights were able to take off. So these are not events that just occur and we don't have to worry about. They're occurring with increasing frequency. Unexpected events are physical like this, but we can also have events that are generated by politicians, solar tariffs that are going on right now. All of the farmers around me in central Illinois are not making any money this year. Why? Because soybean exports to China have gone to zero. And they are really worried because soybeans are very fragile. And they're very expensive, very difficult to store, unlike corn, which you can store for several years. So this is coming about as a result of that. And we're gradually seeing some of the negative economic impact of that on the economy.
General Motors has announced it's closing 5 locations. And making 15,000 people unemployed over the next year. They said that as a result of the increase in tariffs, those intermediate inputs that go into an American car come, a lot of them, from China. It's going to raise the price between $3,000 to $5,000 on a car. And they're worried that people will go and buy cars made in Korea, cars made in Mexico, cars made in Japan or Europe. And finally, we've got unexpected events like fiscal wars between states. A new person is elected in a state and starts a whole process of trying to stay in business by offering huge tax incentives. All right, here are some of the economic impacts that you can read at your leisure, but I mean, we're looking at
Stuff that is not trivial. Shocks, and then we have a huge period of positive shocks as a result of the financial aid coming in and rebuilding process. So we have to look at those things very carefully. And as you will see, we have enormous problems with how people change their behavior over time. And I'm just going to sample a couple of these things. This is the sort of model that we do with, and we have to come back another night and go through the detail. It has one interesting feature, that we don't assume that all production occurs instantaneously. And we assume that sometimes we have sectors that anticipate production, sometimes they are just in time, and others are responsive. They wait for you to put the order in before they produce the good or service. And we've incorporated that in our model. And as a result, we get some very nice economic impacts. But what does this do, and I will jump to this, it really creates a huge challenge for us. And let me just give you an example of the Great Pension earthquake in 95 in Colombia. Long-term consumer spending is the line at the top there. The earthquake occurs. Immediately, people become risk-averse. And it took well back. We can show that unexpected events like this can have a long-term serious impact on the economy. We had, towards the end of this period, a major problem of deflation, not inflation, deflation. Japanese consumers said, I'm not going to go buy a new refrigerator this week because next week it's going to be cheaper. And then they look next week and say, well, the price dropped, but maybe next week will drop even more. So basically they stopped spending money in anticipation the prices will continue to go down. So these are the sort of long-term consequences that we try to affect. And in a sort of an ex-ante case, we are modeling an earthquake that is reputed to occur every 200 years. Last time it occurred in the central part of the U.S. in 1812, so it's kind of late. Let's hope they're wrong and it doesn't occur at all. But it was the most significant earthquake ever recorded in the U.S. And what we basically try to do is capture in our modeling the linkages between structure being destroyed, in other words, a bridge collapsing or a highway being interrupted, and what is the economic impact on the economy. This is the self-analysis that we use, jump orders, and the results. The white triangle is the locus of the earthquake, and the darker the shade, the more negative the economic impact.
And you can see by the time you get out to the west coast, it has very, very little impact, but very, very negative impacts around the earthquake itself. And we developed a very nice piece of software that enables us to simulate earthquakes of different orders of magnitude and find out where they're going to have their most serious impact. The most critical reason is 1/3 of all the commodities that move across the U.S. go across this region. So any disruption in this region is going to have significant long-term impacts. And we had partnership between engineers, sorry, Eagle Winnie, but I love engineers. I have 2 of them in my house, but they think very differently than economists. And so this was our analysis of what is analytically important based on economics on the right-hand side, engineering. And when we did it across the whole network, we found
criticizing our policymakers. Sometimes some of our colleagues think differently, and we're just as bad. We think differently too. And then trying to come up with some consistent language is a really challenge. So, what do we learn from these unexpected events? It's a real challenge to our standard economic models. And we're going to see more of these higher frequency. We need to think about how we're going to handle it, and I've got some ideas there to deal with. Would you like to jump 2 minutes? Pardon?
10 minutes. 10 minutes.
You're a tough boss. Okay. So let me just do the final thing to talk about economic stability. This is a complication for policy making. I mentioned the case of Urbana, where investment was placed, and we saw that really the highest concentration of economic impact occurred in the most prosperous parts. We've seen that the Gini index over the last 20 years has increased, and I saw mentioned last week that it is now decreasing again to around 0.34. But the one problem we have is that it depends on the spatial scale that we look at this. And you can see here, when you look at the country level, the major regions, the provinces, and the districts, you get very, very different outcomes. One of my formulas, and the other one, who's now in Surabaya, has got a very nice paper that addresses some of these challenges, because it's not monotonic as you change the spatial scale. The other thing that I think is very important for us to understand is policy intervention requires some very careful thinking. And part of the problem that I find with policy people is they don't look carefully enough at what people have done elsewhere. And secondly, they don't consider the context. So for example, we have a couple of students who are now looking at funding for micro enterprises in Chile. And what they discovered is programs they took from Brazil, from Bangladesh, just don't work in that country. So they were adopted without much context. And so we find a lot of regional development policies are enacted on what I call faith-based economics. I think in my stomach, this is going to be successful. What I'm saying is that's not good enough. I think we really have got to do very, very careful formal analysis and really understand much more carefully than we have in the past. The second issue is a lot of our policy interventions are what I call spatially blind. They're unintended consequences. All right? So probably 80% of the central government's budget in Indonesia is not specifically targeted to regional development, but it has a spatial impact. And we call those things spatially blind. And we found that there are some serious consequences. An example I use is in Brazil. A tariff reduction resulted in a uniformly positive increase across all sectors in the most prosperous southeast part of Brazil And 80% of the sectors in the least prosperous part of the country, in the northeast of Brazil, had a negative effect. But the policy of tariff reductions was spatially blind. They did not look, before they enacted the tariff reductions, at the spatial implications. The other part about this is that there are these important interregional spillover effects, and we need to get a much better data set to handle their magnitude and their directions. And this, I think, is going to be very important. And there are two things that are creating these spillovers that I list here. One is the process of hollowing out. Firms are now much less dependent on sources of supply in their local region and much more dependent on sources of supply, often with very wide differences. And secondly, firms are reorganizing in a fragmented environment where they're specializing in production sequences and often locating those in different geographic locations. And the result of this is we now have interregional and international trade growing much more rapidly than gross profit. And this has come about as a result of these things. Both of those contribute to significant spatial spillover effects. All right. And I'm going to jump over this to just show you two final diagrams. When we put this all together and we try to understand how our economy interacts, this is an example for my own state of Illinois in terms of its interactions with our neighbors. And you can see it is incredibly complicated. We've got positive relationships, we've got negative relationships, we've got strong relationships, and we've got weak relationships. So a filled arrow indicates a positive impact, a wider arrow indicates a large impact, an open arrow, an empty arrow indicates a negative impact. So for example, we have relationships between Illinois and OH, that's Ohio. We generate a positive impact on Ohio, but Ohio, when it grows, has a negative impact on Illinois. And we need to understand those dynamics. How is that coming about? What is the process? Is it stable over time? What sort of things would like to change? Secondly, when we looked at the Great Recession, it didn't just have an impact on each state independently. When Illinois declined, you can see what happened as you look across the first row. That's the city region of Chicago, had a negative decline in Indianapolis, Detroit, Columbus, Madison. 20% of the negative impact was concentrated in the Midwest. Okay. All right. This is some work that Puck Stewart did looking at the structure of those sort of relationships in Indonesia, and we're continuing to work on that. And probably by the middle of next year, we will have some interesting things to say about it. So, final slide. One thing that I think has really happened over the last 2 or 3 decades is economic and fiscal policy interventions are becoming much more frequent. But are they more effective? And from my experience, I found people are very interested in doing ex ante, but they're not very interested in doing ex post, because they don't want to find out that their policy was not effective. And I think that it's very important for us to try to develop analytical tools that our policy folks can use to try to see how well they're doing. And in particular, we don't spend enough time monitoring so that we can help make mid-course corrections and perhaps try something else. But I think we need to understand that the sort of economic impact analysis that I've illustrated here is likely to continue to play a key role in assisting policymakers, I hope, understand the consequences of their action or inaction. But they also need to understand that we are not totally perfect in terms of our ability to make forecasts. And with unexpected events, we have a whole new set of challenges that are really going to require some significant investment in research and development so that we can develop models and tools that will be helpful. But I want to end on some positive note. When I first came to Indonesia 30 years ago, the set of people who were trained to do this sort of work was very, very small. Now, as a result of the formation that you mentioned in the URSA meeting, 200 or 300 people attending these meetings every year, people talking about the high quality of research that is being conducted. You now have a very, very good core of competence in Indonesia. And these are people who can provide insight into policy formation. And I just hope that their advice and analysis will be sought by the policy makers and not ignored. Thank you.